it's not time to lose hope on Bryce Young quite yet. And the examples of Darnold, of Mayfield, and of Geno Smith very clearly show us that. All right, it's the Breer Report for September the 17th. Week 2 is in the books, and the biggest story coming out of Week 2 relates to perhaps the worst team in all of football, the Carolina Panthers. They benched the number 1 overall pick from just a year and a half ago, Bryce Young. He started 18 games. Dave Canales announcing the move on Monday. They'll go to Andy Dalton now. And obviously this one has a wide-ranging impact. And the question would be, why so soon? Why are you doing it 2 games into the Dave Canales era? And as best I can tell, this comes down to whether or not you can still sell a player to the locker room. And after talking to some people on the other side, guys who've coached for the teams that the Panthers lost to the first 2 weeks, they lost to the Panthers this week, they lost to the Saints in week 1. What they're seeing is a player who's playing with absolutely no confidence at this point. There's an issue with his ability to see over the middle of the field, which of course relates to his height. That impacts how a defense is going to game plan you. It also shows up in the way he's handling the pass rush. And yes, the Panthers have had some issues protecting him, but really the kiss of death for a quarterback is when he starts looking at the rush, when his eyes drop. And that's something that both the Chargers and the Saints have seen, is a quarterback who is looking at the rush as pass plays are going on, which of course is about a guy trying to protect himself, a guy who maybe doesn't want to get hit anymore. And in fairness to Bryce Young, a huge part of this is, there's a limit to how much a guy can be hit. And once he's hit a certain amount, that can affect what he's looking at after the ball is snapped. But once you have a guy at that position, at the quarterback position, who starts looking at the rush, it becomes really, really difficult for that guy to be functional out there anymore. And I think that's the point the Panthers are at just 2 weeks into the season with Bryce Young. So why do they have to make the move? They have to make the move because he's become that much harder to sell to the rest of the locker room. Because here's the deal. The rest of your locker room doesn't care about your 3-year plan. The rest of the locker room doesn't care that you gave up 2 first-round picks and DJ Moore to move up and go and draft Bryce Young with the first overall pick. They don't care about the organizational investment. What they care about is what you're doing for them right now. Because the cold reality of the NFL is 80 to 90% of the guys in every single locker room in the league do not know where they're playing next year. In most cases, their contracts are not guaranteed past this year. And so what they care about is the here and the now. And that means what's going to help them win right now, what's going to help them succeed on an individual basis right now, which ultimately will help determine whether or not they can continue in the NFL and how much they'll get paid to do it. So for the rest of those guys, the other 10 guys in the huddle, the other 52 guys in the locker room, the coach has to be able to sell the starting quarterback to them. And I think based on what I've heard again from the teams that have played against Dave Canales' Panthers, they're seeing a quarterback who is operating back there without a very high level of confidence at all. And so they go to Andy Dalton now. Now, the next question would be, will Young get back in the lineup in week 6, in week 8, in week 10? And certainly there's the possibility that that could happen. But if Andy Dalton plays well, if the Panthers start to turn it around, the chances of that become slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. So this has been taken out of Bryce Young's hands. And if the Panthers start to play well behind Andy Dalton, there is a chance that we don't see Bryce Young. Because right now, the important thing for Dave Canales is to continue to sell his program, to get guys believing. And even if they're not winning, start to play more competitively. The score's been 50-3 in the first half of the first 2 games. That means entering the second half, they've been down 30-3. They've been down 20-0. I mean, in the third quarter of these games, there's not much hope, let alone the final moments. So to continue to build the program there the way that they want to, Dave Canales has got to do things that are going to keep the team believing that they are on the right path. And right now, getting on that right path does not include Bryce Young. Okay, topic number 2, and this will relate back to topic number 1, and this might give Bryce Young a little bit of hope going forward, is how well Sam Darnold played in week 2, how well Baker Mayfield played in week 2, how well Geno Smith played in week 2. Sam Darnold and the Vikings went in and knocked off the Niners at home. The Buccaneers went into Detroit and beat a Lions team that played great in week 1 and defeated the Rams. And Geno Smith went into New England and was a magician in overtime. And now the Seahawks are 2-0. So you have those three guys are now collective 6-0. What do those three guys have in common? Those guys were in bad situations early in their careers. As young quarterbacks, they flashed talent, but they also wound up being benched. And they had the chance to go back and reset and restart their careers. And I'm going to focus on Darnold a little bit here because I did have the chance to talk with Kevin O'Connell about what they've done with Sam Darnold there since signing him back in March. And one of the reasons they signed him back in March is because they saw things on his tape from Carolina at the very end, and then certainly the limited tape they had from San Francisco last year, where Sam Darnold's confidence was starting to be built back up, where he was starting to play faster, in particular in that fourth quarter against the Ravens. The Niners got blown out against the Ravens on Christmas night, but in the fourth quarter of that game, you saw Sam Darnold playing at a different pace than he had as a pro previously. You saw the talent of a guy who was drafted third overall starting to come back into focus. And now the Vikings have a quarterback who's playing that way. They were able to take what he did at the end in Carolina and over his year apprenticeship working under Brock Purdy and for Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco and really put it to work in the spring and the summer and build an offense that works for Darnold. Now, obviously, things became clarified when J.J. McCarthy got hurt, but I think Darnold was winning the job all along because they did have the confidence that Darnold could do these sorts of things. So what do you see? You see a 97-yard touchdown throw to Justin Jefferson that very clearly showed third overall pick talent. And you saw a drive where Sam Darnold more or less shut the door on the San Francisco 49ers. Again, maybe the best team in football. And he was able to do that in the fourth quarter after the Niners had bounced back, had gotten momentum on their side, had gone on a 99-yard drive to cut the Vikings lead to 20-14. Sam Darnold is able to convert 3 consecutive third downs. And the middle of those was a 3rd and 8 throw to Jalen Nailor for 26 yards, back shoulder, down the seam, in between 3 defenders. That was as high level throw as you saw anywhere in the league this weekend. And in talking to Kevin O'Connell about it, he talked about how Sam Darnold was playing that drive with me, with the coaches. He was able to execute what the coaches were trying to do and work the team down the field playing his game. And I don't know if Sam Darnold's going to be a starter for the next 10 years in the NFL. I don't know if he'll be the starter next year in Minnesota based on all the great things that J.J. McCarthy was able to do over the course of the summer. What I do know is Sam Darnold is a better quarterback than he showed with the Jets. The same way Baker Mayfield's a better quarterback than he showed in Cleveland. And the same way Geno Smith is a better quarterback than he showed with the Jets now almost a decade ago. Situation can determine how good a quarterback plays. The situation for Bryce Young in Carolina has not been great. That does not mean he cannot play quarterback in the league. Maybe he can, but this is not the right environment for him to show that one way or the other. And so I think in a certain way, getting the chance to take a breather, and I don't think this is why they benched him, but getting a chance to take a breather could actually help Bryce Young. And whether his restart happens in Carolina or somewhere else, I don't think the time to give up on Bryce Young is upon us. I think this is simply a result of the circumstance that he's in. And I'm not saying I disagree with Dave Canales' decision here, because when a quarterback loses confidence, that's a really bad place to be. And again, there are signs he's lost confidence. But it's not time to lose hope on Bryce Young quite yet. And the examples of Darnold, of Mayfield, and of Geno Smith very clearly show us that. Finally, topic number 3. We'll go to those Niners who did lose to the Vikings on Sunday, who are now 1-1, who after a very, very impressive start on that Monday night against the Jets, took a step back on the road on Sunday. They were without Christian McCaffrey. They will be without Christian McCaffrey for at least the next 3 weeks. They are now going to be without Deebo Samuel for a couple of weeks. And this to me shows why they never really wanted to let go of Brandon Ayuk. and why they were willing to ride that one out, the same way they rode out the negotiation with Debo 2 years ago, the same way they rode out the negotiation with Nick Bosa last year. The reason why they're being careful with McCaffrey is because they want a full speed McCaffrey in 2024, and not just in the first month of 2024, but for the entirety of the season, at the very end, mostly. The reason they're going to be careful with Debo Samuel is because they want a full speed Debo Samuel when they get to January and February. And this, in a lot of ways, is the way that the Patriots would manage things when they had Tom Brady, where they would be careful with injured guys early in the year so they could assure having those guys at full strength when they got to January and February. Conversely, it's also why it's important to have a surplus of people at multiple positions, so you can continue to go out and be competitive as you're managing those injuries. And the reason why is because the next few weeks, how they manage the absence of McCaffrey, how they manage the absence of Samuel, could well decide whether a playoff game is played in San Francisco or Philadelphia, San Francisco or Green Bay, in San Francisco or Detroit, in San Francisco or Los Angeles. Pick a city, right? It could determine whether or not a divisional playoff game is at home. It could determine whether or not an NFC championship game is at home. So as enticing as the draft picks might have been, it's better to have Brandon Ayuk on the roster right now. That's the point the Niners are at right now. They are very much in a situation where the margins can make a huge difference. The margins will make a big difference in whether or not they're able to finally get over the hump and win a championship. And so with McCaffrey out and Samuel out for the next couple of weeks, who becomes very important? Brandon Ayuk's very important. If they had went and gotten, say, Cortland Sutton from Denver, or Kendrick Bourne from New England, or Amari Cooper from Cleveland, I mean, those guys can play, but would those guys be capable of being the top option in the offense, in an offense that's a little depleted right now, as Brandon Ayuk is? I'd say no. And that, to me, underscores Ayuk's value and why getting him done, even at the number they got him done at, was such a big priority. All right, that's my 3 topics and the Breer Report for September the 17th. We'll be back with you guys at the end of the week.